Welcome to the Urban Wine Club podcast. Pour a glass, sit back, and enjoy the show.
Hey everyone, thanks for joining us. I'm Foti and with me is Claudia.
Hi.
And we are here to actually basically break it down on why we believe our digital marketing platform is effective and also essential to what's happening today in the world of wine and spirits.
Love it.
Right?
Yeah. I would say it's not only what we're doing, but it is one opportunity of many in the digital space where you can get the most for your money as opposed to what we're doing.
Correct.
So in the last episode, we talked about how there's definitely all kinds of new challenges over the last 5 years that we could have never have guessed, whether
Sure.
it was all of a sudden we can't find corks and glass from a production perspective to COVID messing up all the numbers and the demand. Everyone's drinking martinis at 2 p.m. And then all of a sudden everyone overconsumed and now people are consuming less and consuming differently.
Correct.
So with that being said, because of the shift in consumption, we have all different kinds of brands popping up and all kinds of access to these different brands. And the real question is, from your perspective as someone who buys product from both for a retail store and for restaurants, I want your insight as to how can we spend money differently to target this new audience and this new way of consumption?
Well, I think it's, as consumers, like what we're subject to when it comes to information, entertainment. When I was growing up, it was TV, right? We watched a lot of TV, commercials. That's what, if we want to learn about something, it was commercials. Now, fast forward, I don't need commercials, I don't need TV. It's all about this.
Yeah.
Right? So everything is here. We all know this, we've all discussed this. So having said that, I think that now because of thanks to Meta and Instagram, it used to be Facebook, but now Instagram and so forth, there's this new outlet that people are using for their personal reasons, their business reasons, so forth. So I believe now is the time that we can use this platform along with the podcasting platform. I'm sure how many podcasts you probably listen to?
Too many.
Too many. The second I get into my car, my Bluetooth connects to my phone, all the podcasts on Spotify ready to go. I just have to pick and choose. So having said that, we're now listening to more episodes via podcast than anything ever, right? So we believe in order for us to connect to this distinct audience, that depending on the age group, I think that podcasting is a huge opportunity to actually connect with consumers that we kind of lost.
Yeah.
Is that the word to use? In the last 5 years between COVID, post-COVID, I think that there's been a disruption, that it's been hard to bring back those that were once consuming wines and spirits.
And that's what we talked about in the last episode too, is that everybody's complaining that, people aren't drinking anymore, people aren't drinking as much. They're drinking, they're just drinking something else. And what we've seen about the non-alc space, the low and no alc space, is that it's exploded because they know how to target their audience. And like we said, these people aren't sober. 80%, over 80% of them still consume alcohol. So what have they done differently? They've changed their marketing to target this new space where people are focused on health and moderation and balance.
Right.
They've also crushed the media game. So whether that's listening, podcasts, whether that's Instagram, TikTok, scrolling, you name it, it's based on what we're consuming and where it comes from, which is a phone. It's not a billboard, it's not commercials. I haven't had cable since I was 20. That doesn't exist for me anymore. So commercials are dead. If you're investing in commercials, and I can already think of a dozen brands I've worked with in the past where they're investing in that, not only is it big bucks, but I'll never even see it. And I know I'm not the only one.
I mean, and this, if I can add to this, Claudia, you mentioned about the current audience or consumer base, they're shifting, but we don't also consider there's always a newcomer into the, because once you turn 21, you come into the space
Right.
of being a potential consumer. So obviously when I was 21, there's been a lot more drinkers now since I've been 21. So it's also how to target the newcomers into their
Right.
market. So there's all these variables, all these considerations that the industry has to consider, if that's the word to use. So to your point now, so what used to work doesn't work anymore as
Right.
effectively
Yeah.
anymore.
So I guess what I want to ask you, and I feel like as a former portfolio manager for a wine distributor, I started to see over the last couple of years, post-COVID, wineries really, especially like larger suppliers, starting to invest in some kind of digital marketing.
Sure.
But that was at a large scale. So that was not at a local level. And I think what you can probably relate to as someone who is involved in, again, the retail and the restaurant side, is that at a local level, we are tragically mismanaging budgets from the supplier and from the distributor.
Agreed.
I think everybody keeps spending in the same patterns and getting the same results.
Can I add to that?
Add.
I can't, and just gonna put it out there. I've been to tons, I won't say dozens, but tons of invitation luncheons where I was invited to spend time where the supplier spent a lot of money to wine and dine us for that moment with pretty much very minimal results.
Okay, this is
And I personally have walked out feeling bad because
Yeah.
I went out of respect, but I got nothing out of it.
Right, totally. All right, suppliers, listen, because this is what a buyer will not tell you, but they will still go to your lunch, right? You're one of a million.
Because we all get invitations and we all want to, respectfully show up. We're not going to make all of it. We're not going to make all of them.
Yeah.
But the ones that we do go to, we go because it's just out of respect. And when you do go to that, you're with other friends in the industry, and it's more of a social hangout.
Right.
There's no real focus on these brands. There's no
Yeah.
real focus on the product, where at the end of the experience, I'm excited to say, you know what, that was great, and I'm going to put this on my program.
Give me 10 cases.
No.
Yeah.
If anything, and I'll be guilty of it, I've made purchases only because I felt obligated.
Oh
Does that-
my God. Totally.
Okay.
I've done it because I feel obligated, and I've gone to those. I've also ghosted people,
Okay.
if I'm being honest. Like, I'll go, I'll say I'll do
What does
it.
that mean? I'm too old
Ghost?
well,
Go, like, meaning like.
yeah, no,
and
I'm kidding, but you're right. And
the people pleaser comes out of me though, because like I know they're here. They spent so much money to come here. They've invited you to this lunch. You have a seat at their table. It's a little awkward. You listen to their story that you already know. You try the wines you probably already know. Maybe you get a fun one. You say thank you so much. I'm going to buy your product, and then like I don't know, you get busy, and then you're on to the next buyer's lunch that looks the exact same.
Well, Claudia, I would say that it doesn't need to be that way. I think the money can be spent more strategically.
Okay, so let's start with that because you started with the buyer's lunch, so we're talking on premise. We're talking restaurant side. A supplier's coming into town. They have a budget to spend locally.
Sure.
Instead of a buyer's lunch, what would you suggest they do?
I would suggest that we do a small, intimate gathering over some food and wine, and we actually conduct and host an interview, whether it be with the representative of the supplier, a producer that the supplier represents, and we discuss their story about who they are, their product, their brand, the reasons what makes their products so different than others.
Mm-hmm.
And our team collectively puts this together, produces a nice product that we push out into the podcast world and social media, that it gets in front of a potential audience that would, number one, have interest, number two, appreciate to listen to this individual, that we can then in turn use to create a huge amount of awareness that would convert into potentially getting people to buy these wines.
Yeah.
Or
Okay.
spirits.
I mean, I agree with everything you said, and basically what you're suggesting is say everything you would say in a room to buyers, but capture that digitally forever,
So
right?
it's having the approach of having 10 to 15 buyers in a room versus potentially thousands or 10,000s. What's the word after thousands?
Million?
Is the word? Thousands of eyes and ears, listeners, consumers that are going to see this, hear this, and embrace it, that would actually consider the product
Right.
over a group of 12 to 15 buyers in one room that are just there to have a free ride.
Right. And here's the thing. We're obviously biased, right? We're literally on a podcast, doing a podcast, telling people to do a podcast.
Okay.
But everything you're saying is right, because what we're talking about is commercials don't matter. The way we used to advertise doesn't matter. And I promise you, if you're not trying to keep up with the trends in advertisement, somebody else is, and their ad is popping up what could be your consumer, but it's going to be their consumer for that reason, because they're working smarter, not harder. And they're focused on spending to gain exposure. So what's great about a podcast is, say a supplier, say a winemaker, someone were to sit right in between us and we were to talk to them just like this, have them share their story. You already have an audience for a podcast. When people search their name, their winery or wine podcasts in Google, this pops up.
Right.
You can, if you're filming the way we do, make the most out of your time invested. Then you can use that for social media. You can use that for your website. You can use that for paid advertisements. Furthermore, and I'm so guilty of this. Furthermore, you can use this as training for your sales force at a national or global level. Because I feel bad that I'm saying this, but I mean, I used to have 40 suppliers, and those suppliers had multiple brands too. So there were times where I would be selling my own brand that I own, that I managed for the distributor where we live in Massachusetts, and I'd be driving with the samples on my way to sell it, and like, I just can't keep all of the wine information in my brain for all the hundreds of wines that I managed. So like a great one is Favio Wines from Napa. Andy Erickson had a podcast, and you know what I did? I literally Googled Favio Wines podcast, and then I found an episode about Andy Erickson talking about how the brand was born. I listened to it while I was driving to go and sell to that account, and I sounded like a genius. And that should be something. Exactly. That, and I know I'm not the only one. I'm fairly organized. So if I'm like that, driving, feeling like it's last minute, trying to educate myself, I'm not the only one.
Right.
And if you can use this podcast to educate your sales force at a national level, think about how much more sales you'll have at the end.
That's the thing. It's actually these approaches that were not available to us then, and look at all the energy and thought process and all this organizational skills that you have to get you to that point where now, if this is being done for you and it's available to you, think about the impact and effectiveness it can have for you, your team, your sales force, and so on.
Why would you educate 10 people for an expensive lunch for buyers that aren't going to buy when you can literally say the same thing into a mic with a camera and educate thousands of people, with hundreds of those people being your sales force?
And the great thing is that could be also given to your potential buyers.
Yeah.
Those 10 people that were going to come and just drink and eat and hang out, you can actually still present this content to them as well.
I mean, I want to take it a step further, or I want to play devil's advocate here, because I can already hear like 5 voices in my head from former suppliers that would say like, yes, I like this idea, but I'm coming to visit Massachusetts to visit and connect with the market and network and meet potential buyers. I get it. So here's my other suggestion then. If you have a couple $1,000s to spend on a buyer's lunch and you wanted to invite 10 people, do half of that. 5 somms, and I wouldn't even worry so much about, but could they buy today? Could they buy this week? And again, I understand we're all chasing sales month to month, year over year, right?
Sure.
But think about the 5 somms that you just want to meet, because also they could be somewhere else tomorrow, where there would be good conversation and it would be a good opportunity to network and collaborate. So pick 5 somms, and again, do a small intimate lunch. You don't need to go over the top. Make it worthwhile and collaborate with those somms. Collaborate with the restaurant you're at, the chef you're at. Get a camera in front of you guys. Collaborate with some food and beverage videographer that can capture the moment and literally just exist. Do your spiel, talk about your brand, talk about your wines, the history. encourage the Psalms to have a discussion as well and capture that digitally forever. I promise that's worth way more than 10 buyers.
And add that to what you said. Have the Psalms also recorded about the product they're having that moment and give their perspective.
Yeah.
And so the time is now to do this. This is the time that we're living in. These are the tools that are at our hand. We have the infrastructure to do so. So I think that for those that are listening and watching, that it's well worth the investment, and I think it's well worth the consideration, because think about what you've been doing, think about what you've been spending, just reflect on your own reports and see what's been happening prior and see what can happen moving forward.
Yeah. This is also a great conversation just to listen to as a consumer, as someone who's not in the industry, just to hear, oh, how am I being persuaded to buy brands? And I'm just suggesting to maybe be more intentional before you buy. And I'm so guilty. I see something on Instagram and I just add to cart because it's so convenient. It's such an impulse, right? But when you talk through the steps and the lengths and the money people will go to convince you that their product is the best,
right,
there's a very good chance that somebody else has a better brand that you just haven't seen yet or had access to yet, but somebody else is better at convincing you their brand is good. So it's interesting for anybody listening.
I think that we've highlighted a lot of like challenges, and we've highlighted a lot of things that are not working, but I'm still, at the same token, Claudia, very excited and optimistic on the new way of approaching wine, spirits. We have a very here's the thing, we have a very adventurous demographic to work with at the same token. Before, obviously, we discussed that generations before, loyal consumers, they stick to their brands, they did not deviate, they stayed in that lane their whole lifespan. But now, I think we should also consider that as challenging, as hard, whatever the word you want to use, we should also consider that these are moments of opportunities, that we have a more diverse group, we have a larger audience to work with. It's how do we get to that audience?
Right.
And I think we can do it here.
Yeah. That's the thing too, where for those suppliers out there, for those winery owners out there that are like, oh, sales are so bad, people aren't drinking as much, like, if you break the cycle and you look at this opportunity where there's a huge audience that is willing to consume your advertisement
100%.
And try your product, and they're actually willing to try new things. They don't need to stick to their buttery oaky Chardonnay that's $10 a glass that they've had for 10 years. They're willing to try something new. This is a massive opportunity that you didn't have 30 years ago.
And saying massive, I want to add this, but don't quote me because you mentioned that before. Okay. But if I'm not mistaken, globally, we're still the largest consumer of alcohol globally. Are we?
I don't know. Are you looking at me to confirm?
No, I don't want you to confirm, but I've come across different reports that just take that into consideration. We're in a massive market when it comes to alcohol consumption, and whatever the variables are, when it comes to this market, I think we still, regardless of downfalls and trends and changes, there's still massive opportunities.
Yeah, I agree. Also thinking about the consumer, like I hang out with people who are in their early 20s to early 30s.
Sure.
And where I think there's a misunderstanding is that these people love spirits and crafted cocktails because the bartenders are selling it to them. They like and appreciate that it's a crafted beverage with a story. That's quite literally what wine is, but we're not as good at selling that. This comes from a real time and place with some real history.
Sure.
And you can totally geek out about it. We're just not as good at selling in this modern day as some of these other cool, trendy bars are with spirits or cocktails.
But having said that, I think we can accomplish that with here.
Yeah, agreed. I have one last question then. So we talked about the restaurant example for supplier spending locally.
Yes.
What's your biggest pet peeve from the retail side? For me, I feel like we try to not sell based on price, but then eventually always goes that way. And it starts with like a bottle on a case or a 1 on 10 and then a credit on top of the free good. There's always that deal on top of the deal.
Yeah.
And I think there's a better way to spend it, because say you convince someone to buy 10 cases and that means 5 or 6 of them sit in the back, that doesn't actually educate anybody, it just sits on the floor. So how would you spend money from a retailer's perspective?
That's a good question, Claudia, because the dynamic of a buyer in retail has changed. Because before, if I was a buyer 10 years ago and you wanted to present to me a deal, and I said, okay, I'll take those 10 cases, but you need to give me some tastings in the last 4 to 6 weeks, and let's break it down, and I can move those cases. We don't see that as much happening because not many people are coming out to tastings as they once used to, right? So that, I think, is something that we have to really take time to consider, because those 10 cases that come to a retail, I think it's the commitment where maybe we can even offer doing podcast episodes for retail to connect local consumers in a local area that would go to their local wine shop because they saw an episode about a specific brand that they can get to.
You mean like giving them a place to go and buy it?
I really think that we can tie in retail into this platform where we talk to the audience, they get excited, but then they need to know, where can I get it?
Yeah.
So maybe the approach here is to tie in retail into these episodes so that the ROI would be basically tying in retailers that would actually buy into what we're doing and being a partner or collaborator of this initiative.
Right. Yeah, I agree. I mean, everything you just said here, and with like the buyer's luncheon option, we're not necessarily like reinventing the wheel. It really is the same thing that we've been doing for decades, but it's just enhancing the experience and converting it digitally so you can have a larger reach.
Agreed. So there's lots to work on.
Yes.
I think that we have a lot of exciting episodes coming up that we're going to dive into, but this was great. I'm looking forward to discussing this more detail. But Claudia, thanks again. I'm going to cheers with you with another empty glass because I'm the one that drinks more than you do. But cheers.
Cheers. Thank you.